How does a young man go from being one of the cool kids to idolizing violent extremists, and then to working undercover to stop them? Mubin Shaikh lived that transformation. This is a conversation about radicalization, identity crisis, family, and the power of courageous course correction. Stick with me and we'll get into it. Welcome back, my friends, to the Derate The Hate podcast. I'm your host, Wilk Wilkinson, your blue-collar sage, calming outrage and helping to navigate a world divided by fog and those who would spread that fear, outrage, and grievance. The Derate The Hate podcast is proudly produced in collaboration with Braver Angels, America's largest grassroots, cross-partisan organization working towards civic renewal. This podcast amplifies the mission that we share to foster a more respectful and united America where civic friendship thrives even when we disagree. Each week, through the power of story, conversation, and connection with incredible guests, we work to build bridges instead of barriers. Not to change minds on the issues, but to change how we see one another when we differ. Because, friends, it really is about bettering the world one attitude at a time. We did not create the hate, but together we can derate the hate. So be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, share it with a friend, and visit braverangels.org to learn how you can get involved in the movement to bridge the partisan divide. Friends, I am so incredibly grateful that you have joined me for another powerful Derate The Hate episode. So let's get to it. Today you're going to hear one of the most fascinating and honestly humbling stories that we've ever featured on this show. Mubin Shaikh grew up in Toronto. As a teenager, he experienced an identity crisis that slowly escalated into radicalization. He immersed himself in extremist ideology. He idolized violent jihadists. He believed that he was part of something bigger. Then 9/11 happened. And instead of doubling down, he began asking hard questions. That story led him to Syria to study Arabic and Islamic theology. It led him to completely re-examine what he had believed. And when he returned to Canada, he did something extraordinary. He volunteered to work undercover with the Canadian Security Intelligence Service. He infiltrated extremist networks. He helped to stop terrorist plots. His work is now permanently featured in the International Spy Museum in Washington, D.C. under Preventing Terror. Today, Mubin works with Parents for Peace, helping families intervene before radicalization turns into violence. This conversation is about psychology, belonging, identity, moral dilemmas, parenting in the digital age, and the reality that radicalization can happen anywhere if the right ingredients are present. Let's get into it with my friend, Mubin Shaikh. Here we go. Mubin Shaikh, it's great to see you again, man. Welcome to the Derate The Hate podcast.
Right on. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. I'm excited to bring this story to the DTH listeners, Mubin, because what you're doing is so incredibly important in the world in which we live today. Terrorism, global terrorism, extremism is always a problem on the minds of so many. And I've had the opportunity, via this podcast to have some incredible conversations with deradicalization experts, people who've done incredible work. And when I heard a bit about your story, Mubin, and how you went from being radicalized yourself as a young person to then actually de-radicalizing yourself and then becoming part of the solution and now being part of Parents for Peace, I'm like, this is somebody I definitely want to introduce to the listeners. So grateful to have you here, man.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's important to discuss these issues. They're so timely and relevant, and it's best for the people to get the right information, right? As opposed to all the garbage that's out there. So hopefully we can do some of that today.
Absolutely. There is a lot of garbage out there. So bringing you in here to talk a little bit about this, and the way that I really want to start this, Mubin, is to first, you know, kind of get into what it was, as a younger man when you first, I guess, found yourself becoming radicalized. Um, because you're from Canada, right? Just so that the listeners know, you're from Canada, and so you're not native to some of the areas that people would generally kind of think about radicals coming from. Whether it be the Middle East or different areas of the country when it comes to like Islamic terrorism. You're originally from Canada, and you became radicalized as a teenager, or can you walk me through that? What that was and what that looked like from not being or growing up in Canada to becoming radicalized in that type of environment.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, radicalization, if I can simply define it as, I like to say a normal human psychological process whereby people become increasingly extreme in their views. So it's this process of escalation.
Sure.
The end result of that is either extremism, where you come to believe that violence in the public space is okay, or the other output is violent extremism, where you believe in doing the violence in the public space. Okay. So even like the idea that like, oh, radicalization, it's something that happens over there, or right, like this is part of the education that people need to have, which is radicalization can happen anywhere the conditions are present, right? It's like the ingredients that you kind of put into it. So sometimes I jokingly refer to it as like the cupcake theory of radicalization,
Yeah.
where it's like if you put in the right amount of flour and the one egg and the sugar and then you put it in an environment, right, that is conducive to that. So it cooks and it bakes the cupcake. And then if the temperature is right and you follow the instructions, you get cupcakes.
All of a sudden,
So
you got a
doesn't,
radical.
yeah. So wherever you are, whatever your background, that kind of radicalization can occur. And it depends. Sometimes, I mean, there are different factors. If you can imagine, people pull in to their center all these different things, right? So, let's say a white kid growing up in rural America, he's gone to Bible school from the age of 5. How is he going to view the world when he's 15? Now, I deliberately use that example because I'm going to use my example. So what if you go to Quran school from the age of 5?
Sure.
How are you going to look at the world when you're 15? And
Yeah.
so that's what happened to me. I grew up, I'm born and raised in Toronto, Canada. My parents are Indian Muslim background. And what you find is in a lot of these urban places where a community will come to, they tend to replicate what they know, right? It's just conditioning, expressing their conditioning. So if they grew up with this style of Islamic school, when they come to Canada, they're going to set up that style of Islamic school.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why you see these same styles of Islamic schools, especially coming from the Indo-Pakistani, context.
Sure.
Anywhere there are large groups of Indo-Pakistanis. So in the UK, in the US, Canada, Australia, various countries in Europe. And the thing is that especially for radicalization in the West, Muslim kids, I'll speak from my perspective, identity crisis, right?
Okay.
You have, if you will, old world mentality. Right. So my parents, I mean, they're born and raised in India. My dad he did spend some of his older teenagers, young 20s in the UK. He was studying electronics, I think it was the 60s it would have been. And in Canada, the community, the Muslim the Muslim community, basically, because especially my generation, we came from where, these people had come from these countries, right? They had been in the country for maybe 20 years. And so they're replicating those institutions that they're accustomed to. So I am basically forced to go to Quran school from the age of 5. But I'm also going to public school during the daytime,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
And this is a complete juxtapose, complete opposite. The Quran school is abusive. It's forcing religion, boys and girls, no mixing, right? It's pretty much one demographic, one ethnic grouping. Juxtapose that with the public school, boys and girls mixing, caring, nurturing environment, very diverse background. So this starts to lay the foundation for an identity crisis that would hit me later in my life.
Yeah,
When
how
I got
could
to
it
high
not, right?
school,
How could it not?
yeah, I mean, mostly it's because when I got to high school, I wasn't bullied, I wasn't picked on, I wasn't the victim of racism. Like that was not my trajectory, my experiences. We were the cool kids of high school.
Okay.
And one of the things that I learned from that crew is house parties. All right? If you can remember those back in the day, man. And I always remember thinking to myself, geez, these white people, man, they like their parents allow them to do this stuff. And of course they don't, you know what I mean?
Right, right.
But then I experienced that. I liked that environment. I had a lot of fun. I was a kid. And then I had my own house party.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately for me, my dad actually had his brother check on the house while he was gone. My dad and my parents were out of town.
Okay.
And so in the middle of the party, my uncle bursts through the door and basically catches me red-handed.
Yeah.
And so the shame and the guilt and the trouble that I got into was just overwhelming for me because I was an 18-year-old kid, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so basically I told myself in my panic, okay, the only way that I'm going to make amends is for me to quote unquote get religious.
Okay.
So I would then travel a year later to India and Pakistan. And there was this immersion program that Muslim kids, especially troubled Muslim kids, would be sent to. And it was this immersion experience. You stayed at the mosque, you lived there, you did all your activities there, for 4 months. And so we went across all these different mosques in India and then in Pakistan. But in Pakistan, one of the places they sent us to was a city called Quetta. Now, Quetta at that time and today was and is a stronghold of the Taliban.
Oh boy. Okay.
So
okay.
When I was walking around with a local guy, we came across these guys who I thought were just other religious dudes. They had turbans, beards, robes. And as I came closer to them, I realized that they have weapons displayed in front of them. Rocket-propelled grenades, AK-47, belts of ammunition. And I thought to myself, wait a second, these are not the religious types that I've been hanging around with, because those guys are apolitical, nonviolent.
Sure.
But my exposure to the Taliban as this young Muslim man looking for some kind of identity, some kind of purpose, some kind of belonging to a greater cause. This is what got me interested in that
Sure.
group. And then I started looking more into the group. And then I really bought into the whole, Muslim machismo, if I can put it that way, right? These are warriors, they're fighting the good fight. And I bought into it, and I realized, I remember, telling myself, I want to be like these people. I want to
Wow.
join them. I want to do exactly what they're doing.
Yeah.
And that's
That was
that's
the
how my
genesis of it,
radicalization
right?
trajectory began.
Oh my gosh! So and there's a common theme in a lot of people that I've spoke with, Mubin, who former radicals or who have encountered or interacted with a lot of radicals, and I think that identity crisis thing is hugely important that you bring up, and then the kind of bravado that comes along with that I guess that warrior ethos and how tempting that can be, especially for a young man. I mean, especially for a young man. I mean, I remember what it was like to be in my late teens and my early 20s, and I joined the U.S. military, but yeah, that not really having the wherewithal to know exactly where you want your life to be, but now you encounter this thing. I remember, personally, I remember like when I was at boot camp, they had these videos that would run that would say the United States Navy, a global force for good, and that, still to this day gives me goosebumps just thinking about that. But I can see how easily, and they run those things obviously to get that part of your mindset. But I can see as a young man how that thing that you're describing could really kind of bring you in. So then talk to me about, as you become more radicalized, as you start to kind of, I guess, idolize some of these people who are, or with the Taliban, weapons fighters, just these figures, as you become more radicalized, how did that start to manifest itself for you? But then, and we don't need to get super deep into it, but what changed it for you? What turned that around? Because when someone becomes radicalized, but then realizes that that is not the trajectory that they want to go down, what was that for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. So in the beginning, you take on this sense of like, okay, I belong to something great now. I'm a part of this bigger cause. I can take credit for when they do attacks or they do something, and it was always attacks overseas primarily. So if I let me just date myself a little bit, I need to get right with the chronology, because in 1995 is when I went to India and Pakistan and had my radicalization experience. Then I came back, I accelerated or I escalated my activities. So the group that I had gone with, I left them because they were not political enough. So I was becoming more extreme. And now I'm seeking out those people who believe what I believe. I found a group, not that they were hard to find. It's really the Salafist interpretation of Islam, a very literalist interpretation. And I joined up with them, and immediately thereafter you start to become very separationist from the world. So this is a non-Muslim. It's framed in binary, black and white, Muslim, non-Muslim, good people, evil people. There was no gray in between, no color, right? Only black and white.
Okay.
So these are some of the signs that you see manifested from that extremism. The glorification of violence and death rhetoric, the sudden change in outward dress. Now, that by itself is not a warning sign. I don't want people to get that confused. Just because a kid might decide to become more religious, that's okay. But when you attach that to other things like beliefs, glorification of violence, the desire to travel to conflict zones, support of activities in conflict zones, now you start to get this cluster of behaviors that you can correctly identify as extremism. So what I kept that up for a while, and what I mean by a while, I guess, so 95, I get back at the end of 95, the Taliban take over the first time. I take that as a validation of their worldview. I accelerate. But then this weird thing happens in 1998, right? Just like a little bit more than 2 years later. Actually, 95, so no, 3 years later, almost, yeah, like in December of 1998, I got married. I got married to a girl that I knew from high school who became interested in me after I came back from Pakistan.
Hmm.
And I didn't, everybody didn't know what I was doing and who I was hanging around with, but I there was almost this compartmentalization. So like I didn't tell her the kind of people that I was hanging out with in my ideology because I wanted her, right? And I didn't want to
Right.
say anything that would kibosh that, right?
Right.
So getting married, what that did is if you think psychologically for, it met an intimacy need, a deep human need. Now, this Muslim kid who's thinking about life and what I should do and blah blah blah. Now it's like you're gonna get married. Well, now think about that for a young man. It's like, well, these are one of the things I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to get married, have a family, so on and so forth. So what happened is it took a lot of my energy, and meaning like willingly, like I wanted to do this. I wanted to be with her. And so hanging around with the bad friends, as I call it, started to wane in its influence and its attraction.
Sure.
And I was kind of like one leg in both worlds. I was still hanging out with the guys, but, I was spending more time at home now. And, a year later, I have my first kid. And so this is adding up. And then what happens is from 98 to 2001, you can say it's really starting to wane. And then in 2001, 9/11 happens. And that is the one main thing that really got me thinking, wait a second, like, is this really what I support? Is this really what I'm about? And if you think about it, this kid who in the beginning, yeah, he was like, this is what I'm about, and let's go. Allahu Akbar. Okay. But then now it's like, well, I have a family, I have a kid, and I got to pay the bills, and I need to, I got to work, I got to do all these mundane, everyday, real life things, no longer living in this abstract, this is how the world should be, and I'm going to live it according to how it should be, not how it is. That's where I find a lot of people, this is why they get frustrated, why they radicalize, is because you get this made up abstract idea of how the world is supposed to be, and it's always utopian and it's always perfect, and you're always the hero in that story, by the way. So you see, we create this fake understanding of life, and then when we don't see it around us, we get upset.
Yeah.
Right? So by the time 9/11 happened, I was just like, what is this? Like, this is this Islam? That's what I thought.
Yeah.
And I just realized that, what, I don't know enough about my religion at that time. And so what I did is I said, you know what, I'm going to go and study Arabic and Islamic studies and actually study the religion, because I don't like this. And I want to know where this comes from. And if this is Islam, then I don't want to be a part of it.
Yeah.
And so I would spend the next 2 years after 9/11 in Syria. This is 10 years before the war, so it wasn't so crazy to go to Syria to study Arabic. But I spent 2 years there. I studied Arabic and Islamic studies, and came to realize that these extremist interpretations were completely against the religion, and then came back to Canada, and so began my next adventure.
That is awesome. That is awesome. And congratulations for that. I mean, I don't know that congratulations is the right word, Mubin, but I think about that, and I think about so many of the parallels to what you're saying right now to what is happening in, let's say, United States politics right now, and all the ugly things that are happening with people and their beliefs, and how the thing that strikes me, I think, the most about what you're saying there is that utopian view of how things are supposed to be versus how things actually are and what things actually are. And we can live our lives chasing some kind of utopian dream of how things should be, and allow all these things that are outside of our control to enrage us and make us angry and radicalize us. Because again, like you said, anybody can be radicalized. Anybody. It doesn't matter whether you're Muslim, whether you're Christian, whether you're Jewish, whether you're agnostic, atheist, whatever. It does not matter. When the ingredients are there to make that cake, and the environment is there to support the growth of whatever that is, it's going to happen. And we again, like so many of the things that I say on this podcast, is we cannot allow things that are outside of our control to ultimately define who we are, and turn us into something that we're not. And I want people to really take that away. So So with that, you study in Syria, you become de-radicalized. I mean, it's been a slope. You become de-radicalized, largely in part due to the genesis of becoming married and realizing that there's a better life in the real world than in this utopian, which it's so weird for me to say, kind of this utopian
Yeah, it's like
vision based on hate, you know.
it's pie in the sky versus steak on my plate.
Right, right. Pie in the sky versus steak on the plate. That's an amazing way to put it. That is awesome. So, so now you become this almost spy guy, right? Probably not almost spy guy. You were a spy guy.
Yeah.
Who is now actually continuing to interact with people that I mean, by rights, we're mentors, allies in this life that you used to live in, but now you're actually taking that information and developing cases against these people. Did that present some kind? I mean, it's a weird paradox that I don't know that most
Moral
people.
dilemma.
Moral dilemma. There you go.
Yeah.
That a lot of people might not be able to handle. So, what was that like for you?
Yeah, so when I returned back from Syria in 2004, I get back and I'm reading the newspaper, and the first week that I got back, the paper has announced the arrest of the first Canadian under the newly minted Anti-Terrorism Act. So this individual was arrested in connection with the 2004 London fertilizer bomb plot. This guy went to the same Quran school as I went to as a kid. In fact, he used to sit to the left of me in the
Wow.
school.
Okay.
So I saw a reference to the Canadian Security Intelligence Service in that news article. And if you can imagine, kids, once upon a time, we had these things called phone books where everybody's
Right.
names, addresses, phone numbers were publicly available. So in the back of this phone book was the government listings. I found the Canadian Security Intelligence Service, and I called him up. And I just said, hey, I know this guy. Like, this must be a mistake. And they said to me, look, it's no mistake. It's out of our hands. It's in the courts now. But the fact that you're calling us about him, we want to come and chat with you. Surprise. So they came and talked to me. I told them my life story, and they basically put to me the prospect of working with them as an undercover and basically, quote, tell us who are the bad guys. You tell us who are the good guys and the bad guys. Right? It's simple as that. And so with this newfound appreciation for the rights that we have in the West, I was like, yeah, absolutely. Like, where do I sign up? And so I began undercover operations, infiltration operations. And many of the people that I interacted with were, of course, people that I did know from before. It's not like I went back into the group that I used to be with, because when I left, a lot of people thought I was escalating my extremism. They thought I was going to go over and join some foreign conflict. They didn't realize the change of heart that I had after 9/11. So when I came back, they were just like, oh man, this guy just got back from Syria. Who knows what he did over there? Don't talk about it. Don't even ask him. And so I just played on that, right? They assumed that I had been doing all this stuff. So I let them assume that. And then that brought me into, because I had the street credibility that was needed. I could go into any group, any leader that they had as a target. Either I knew him or I knew the person next to him, right? And so we did online stuff, on the ground stuff. And then in 2006, eventually what ended up happening is I traversed over to the federal police to work an investigation on that side. And in the way that things work here in a police investigation, it goes to court, which means your identity is going to be exposed in court. And it was really weird because you asked about moral dilemmas, and there were a number of dilemmas, right? It wasn't just, hey, like, you're basically spying on your own people. And it was like, I got over that real quick because these people are criminals. These people are plotting, for those who are plotting, terrorist attacks or things like that. Like, I'm going to stop them. It's I feel and I believe it's my duty as a Muslim to stop anyone. It doesn't matter if they're Muslim or not, right? Keeping the public safe, and this is a basic concept of belief. So these guys were plotting catastrophic terrorist attacks, and so it was a sting operation. I was the undercover inserted into the group. They all got caught, and then there was 4 years of court that took place after that. And so my court experience is really what built me, I think. Like, yes, I had those skills, but then it was all tested in court. And so again, back to moral dilemma, like, my God, like, I mean, being cross-examined and, 5 legal hearings over 4 years, the level of scrutiny that I was put under.
Sure.
And it was weird because it validated a lot of the things that I did and why I did what I did, because I knew that I will have to answer for what I'm doing right now.
Yeah.
And this is only a conversation that's happening with me in my own head.
Okay.
Right. And so later on, when it did come out, everything got validated. And yeah, that's basically, so that was the undercover years. 2010, I was done. I got onto social media, kind of like the Muslim counterterrorism guy. So my nickname is the Muslim James Bond. I'll take it. I'll take it.
Sure.
And then in 2010, right, I got online. 2011, the war in Syria kicked off. By 2012, I'm seeing the rise of ISIS in real time.
Mm-hmm.
Now I have some sock puppet accounts. I'm on in the networks. I've already started to infiltrate what later become ISIS networks, and the State Department sees what I'm doing, and they reach out to me and they're like, "Hey, can you come to the US and help us, do some of this stuff?" And so from 2012 to really 2020, when COVID hit, I was just eyebrow deep in anti-ISIS activities for coalition special operations forces. So I did a lot of pre-deployment training. I was in Germany all the time, a couple of Middle Eastern countries here and there, and then just went right back into it as like an independent over those years. And so this is where the de-radicalization stuff starts to come around, because in 2014, when ISIS declared the so-called caliphate, you had people who were starting to come back from those places. And then this is when the whole so-called CVE thing was born, right? Countering violent extremism. What do we do with these people? How do we de-radicalize them? And so on. And so this is where I was able to step up, and I'm using my personal radicalization experience, my de-radicalization experience, my operational experience, which is tested in court. And then the time that I spent online basically tracking, trolling, and even debating a lot of these Al-Qaeda and ISIS guys that were all over the internet at that time.
Yeah. That is so fascinating.
Good times.
And yeah, well, yeah, definitely not your typical life experience that people would be able to relate to, but it's amazing how this thing, over the years progressed and went from being somebody who was radicalized and so easily could have gone down that path, Mubin, of being one of those the violent jihadists, I guess that people are familiar with, and the horror that comes along with that, but your path, and thank God for it, went a different way, and now you've got a wonderful family and children, and you've done monumental things for humanity, in the sense that you've brought a lot of these people to justice and done these incredible things. One thing I want to touch on real quick, you made the joke about the being the Muslim James Bond, but people who are in Washington D.C. at the Spy Museum can actually see a display that's based upon you and your experiences. So talk about that real quick, and then as we round out our time here, which our time has gone so fast here, and there's so much more that we could get into. But I really want you to talk about your work with Parents for Peace now, and what you're doing now, using your experiences and your life experiences to help counter violent extremism, with Parents for Peace. Talk briefly about the display at the Spy Museum in Washington, D.C., and then round out our last couple minutes talking to the listeners about Parents for Peace and what you're doing over there.
Maybe it's a little full, but I'll just put my phone up to the screen so you can kind of see. So, so there's the display. It's got a robe you can see on the back there. There's robe and boots, and then there's a placard there that says basically, this is the robe and boots that Mubin Shaikh wore when he infiltrated the Toronto 18, working undercover for CSIS, the intelligence service. So I was really honored that they reached out to me and they said, "Hey, we want to make a permanent exhibit on you in the museum." And that was a weird feeling, let me tell you, because it's like museum. It's like, does that mean I'm supposed to be dead or something? Like who goes into a museum? So I was really honored by that. I mean, the museum now, it's a new museum. It's got like 5 stories at L'Enfant Plaza in DC there. Really, you should check it out. Anyone that's interested in the topic, it's got really cool stuff related to espionage, Cold War stuff, actual James Bond stuff. And I think I am the last exhibit that you see before you go out the exit door. But again, it's the whole point is that, again, I think it's to that particular section is preventing terror. And right next to it, it's like, terrorism where we play, where we work, where we worship, you know what I mean? And it kind of illustrates the threats, unfortunately, that, that these people pose. So now with Parents for Peace, Parents for Peace is an organization that was founded by concerned loved ones because their kids got radicalized, right? It actually started with an African-American guy, whose kid radicalized, went to Yemen, came back and committed a drive-by shooting at a military recruiting center, killing one service member and critically injuring the second. He's now serving a life sentence. And the parents, the father was like, who do I even reach out to, like, to talk to someone about this? And so that's where Parents for Peace was born. Now we tackle ideologies from across the board. We don't fixate on one or the other. We're totally nonpartisan, apolitical. We do that deliberately because, the politics, it radicalizes by itself. And I think what it does is it distracts people from like the core issues, because you're not going to solve, political problems through politics. It's not how it's going to happen, sure. Right? So one of the big things that we really promote is like, especially for those who are believers, whatever your religious prescription is, you might be a non-believer, you will find that in that world of radicalization, it hits everyone the same. At the end of the day, and this is what I want your listeners to understand, like for parents especially, it's everybody's busy. You know what I mean? If you have both parents, they're probably both working jobs all the time because the cost of living and expenses and sending kid to school and shoes and this and car insurance and everything adds up. And so how much time do parents have with their kids? And the kids are on a, screen all day, every day. I mean, they're learning from us, right? And if you think about it, young kids, their brains are physically still developing.
Yeah.
And when we are now blasting into their brains at very high speeds with very dense information, it's like lobbing bricks onto your brain.
Yeah.
And so it overwhelms them. And that's my theory as to why kids are just becoming overwhelmed by some of this stuff.
Yeah.
Right? Somebody says something wrong to them, they go and they hang themselves in their room.
Yeah.
And then you, the hardworking parent, you don't want to come in and find that, right? So what we've found, is that for parents to be more informed, that these are the things you should look for, be more involved in your kid's life. You can't police them all the time. You can't helicopter over them. You're not around them all the time. All you can do is give them values and skills that will train them so that when they do go out into that real world, they know how to deal with stuff. And it's a real big problem. Like, and I strongly encourage parents. I mean, like I turned 50. Okay. And I've recently been kind of, because it's such a milestone, and I'm looking back at my life, and I'm looking at the way that I raised my kids and the way that my kids, they come to me with stuff.
Yep.
It's always an open conversation. You are not going to lecture your kids out of anything. I mean,
That's
I
right.
remember how I was when I was 17, 18. There's nothing you were going to tell me. Okay. I knew everything, right? As teenagers don't, as
I
we
just
know,
turned
right? So
50 as well, and I'm very familiar. I mean, we're
there you
very
go.
much
Yeah. So you
on
got to be chill.
parallel
You got to be
tracks.
chill. You have to be informed, and this is what Parents for Peace does. And so and just last point, we get cases like the FBI might even refer a case to us. They might give our card to the family, especially if it's a juvenile, because they're not as keen on prosecuting juveniles, especially when they're like 14, 15.
Yep.
But once you start getting closer to 18, 16, 17, 18, you're probably going to get charged. Teachers call us, parents call us, lawyers, especially if their client's been arrested and they're in custody, right? And it's just sad. I see like these young kids who get caught up in this stuff, and it's like you want to kind of, lecture them in one way, but you got to understand like when you were 16, right? So I'm
Yeah.
dealing with a kid who he's 16 years old. He got arrested in a terrorism plot, and kid thinks he knows everything, right? And I'm just laughing it off all the time and chuckling and smiling. And he's just like, why are you laughing this off and chuckling and smiling?
'Cause
And
I
I keep
lived it.
telling him, I was like, because like I see me when I was
Yeah.
16, and I'm basically talking to my younger self.
Yep.
And I use that specifically to show them that I'm basically the ghost of your future,
Yeah.
coming to tell you, hey, this, that, and the other. So that's the work we do at Parents for Peace. All ideologies across the board, a lot of mostly juveniles. And if there's one thing for any kid that's listening, or a parent who might want to convey to their kids, you don't know who you're talking to online. You might think it's your buddy from California or whatever. Chances are it's an undercover FBI agent or somebody
Sure.
like that, law enforcement or something, because they're out there looking for people up to no good.
Yeah.
And so you find these kids who get in these platforms, it's anonymous people. You don't know who you're talking to. You don't hear them. You don't see them. It's just text based on the screen or a messaging app or whatever. And they give everything to this anonymous account. And they'll reveal everything about their plans or this or that. Heck, here's some nudes too while we're at it. And then things go down, in a downward spiral from there, especially if it's a bad actor. So really be smart. Be smarter about what you're saying and doing online. That'll save you a lot of problems.
Well, the internet's an ugly place, Mubin. You and I both know that. And I do love the fact that Parents for Peace is trying to, really be that kind of non-criminal intervention, that step that parents can take to try and turn things around before it's too late. I know not every story is like yours, where people come to that realization on their own. So it does take the right kind of mentorship and the right kind of people. But the big thing I want everybody to take away from this conversation is that there's always options out there for a better way. And it takes a lot of courage to do what you did, and not everybody can do what you did. But courageous citizenship, which is a big thing that we're talking about, Braver Angels right now, a big push in courageous citizenship is just the idea to act instead of react. Don't wait till it's too late. Don't react. Don't simply react to those things that are outside of your control, but act in a proper way and take control of your life. Reclaim your agency where you think you might not have agency. So, Mubin Shaikh, this has been an incredible conversation. The stuff that you've done is just a blessing to the world, and I appreciate you so much. I look forward to more in the future, and we'll make sure that picture that you showed on here is in the show notes for this episode. And I just encourage anybody to check you out, and they can find out more about that and how they can get more about you and Parents for Peace in the show notes for this episode. Thank you, Mubin.
Right on. Thank you too for what you do, brother. God bless you and yours, and the same to the audience watching. Thank you very much for having me.
Friends, I want to thank you so much for tuning in. And if there's anything in this episode that provided exceptional value to you, please make sure to hit that share button. If you haven't done so already, please be sure to subscribe to get the Derate The Hate podcast sent to your email inbox every week. We really are better together, so please take a moment to visit braverangels.org and consider joining the movement towards civic renewal and bridging our political divides. This is Wilk wrapping up for the week saying get out there, be kind to one another, be grateful for everything you've got, and remember, it's up to you to make every day the day that you want it to be. With that, my friends, I'm going to back on out of here and we will catch you next week. Take care.